welcome back to another Black City Coffee blog. So I'm going way back into the past to look at one of Derek's roast alongs for Mill City Roasters. I used to watch these religiously and really try to just pick up whatever I could pick up when I was learning to roast. And I was thinking about this of maybe I can go back to some old content, listen to it again, watch it again, and relearn or maybe really drill down some new things. And this is all because I have also picked up a geisha or a gesha. Spelling, we'll get into that on a video. I think the spelling of the word gesha or geisha really just depends on where it was sourced. So if you were confused about, well, what is it? Is it good or not? We can talk about that in a later video. But so I picked up a gesha from Colombia, actually from Hesea, and I was like, okay, now I'm going to need a plan on how to roast it. It's a honey processed coffee, which is funny. I just talked about that before, how I was straying away from honey process, but it's not really about what process, what origin. It's really about flavors. And I picked up this special coffee because it's a special occasion. So I wanted to have a plan. So let's watch this video. I'll try to break down for you how I'm interpreting it. Derek often would throw so many little jargon thingies, so many little phrases that he would just say. He goes like a million miles an hour. So, but I liked it in that I really had to be paying attention and listening. So maybe I can do that for you guys. I can interpret what he's saying as best as I can. Play off what I do as a roaster. I know that we will roast differently, especially now that I'm at a different place now. So yeah, let's just play this back, and then I'll try to break down stuff, and I'll try to skip around if it gets a little too wordy or long or something. Okay, here we go.
Hello everyone, welcome to Mill City Roasters in Northeast Minneapolis. My name is Derek De La Paz. Today we're going to do something super special. We're going to do the Gesha. So Steve, for my 3-year anniversary this year, because I'm a super dorky coffee person and I tend to love washed, delicate coffees, he went out and sourced a Gesha for us to resell at Mill City. So it's super exciting, super fun. So we got some. So we got some amazing Gesha too from La Esmeralda. Very special stuff. So I spent a couple of weeks working on this coffee, maybe more like a week actually. I've roasted probably 5 or 6 batches at small amounts. It's a lovely coffee. I've done a full cupping on it and descriptions and things like that. It's crazy. It's very delicate. It's very much like a wash coffee. You know, if you like washed Ethios, if you like those type of coffees, this type of coffee is like that, but just 10 times that. Coffee is just full of unique flavors. And it's almost like it makes time super important when it comes to the consumption of the coffee, because the coffee as it sits in your cup changes. So when it's 1 minute off a brew, it's going to have a certain flavor profile. 2 minutes off brew, it's going to evolve into something a little different. 3 minutes off brew, 4 minutes off brew, all the way to cold, it's going to be a totally different cup. And then as it rests, it's going to open up different things.
You see how fast he goes? Okay, 2 minutes off brew, 4 minutes off brew. What does that mean? Off brew just means you brewed it. It's in the cup. And now that's why I always I will hit the timer again after I have removed the crust from the coffee when I'm cupping coffees, right? And so I'll always hit the timer again. And that's definitely something I picked up from Mill City Roasters. Lauren often would go, now I'm going to hit the timer again after I've cleared the grounds off the coffee, because coffee will change as time goes on and the temperature will lower, and as coffee cools, it will start to change. It will start to exhibit more flavors. And so that's all Derek's saying here is just add 2 minutes off brew. 2 minutes off brew. That shorthand just means 2 minutes after it's cooled, right? And then 4 minutes after, and then 5 minutes after. And then I'll often say, I'm trying to write down and take my notes and kind of profile this coffee in the cup at around 8 to 12 minutes. And I try really, really hard to get it down exactly what I'm tasting and put it down on paper. But it's difficult. It's definitely a skill.
So it's very much an experience coffee. You're going to get a lot of different experiences out of this coffee. I would highly suggest roasting it light. You know, we really want it to be light because destroying any of the delicate nuance in this coffee, I feel like that's really what this coffee is about. You know what I mean? It's a very special coffee. It's very expensive, small quantities. So we're going to do the best we can with this coffee. I've worked on this profile a little bit, so I have a pretty solid idea of what I want to do with the coffee. So it's a pretty classic roast. It's a little shorter than some of my roasts. Lower charge temp for a full charge on this. You know, like this coffee is low density. It's a big bean that's low density. Now it's not Pacamara big. You know, it's like halfway between like maybe an Ethio and a Pacamara. You know, it's a little bit about the size of maybe a normal Colombian bean, but they're not round shaped. They're more like canoe
so
shaped.
Pacamara is a variety of coffee, and it's big. Like the green itself is really big, and then when you roast it, it's almost going to double in that size. Which is really fun. It's just fun to see that stuff. Like versus like a pea berry. Pea berry, very small. Almost like a pea berry, meaning like there'll be, you know how there's two halves of a coffee bean within a coffee cherry? Most of the time there's two, right? So a pea berry will only have one, which is really fun. They're just fun little observations.
Oblong. You know, so they're longer beans, but they're also low density. So they feel a little different and they sound a little different in the roaster. So I'm going to go in with a little bit lower charge temp, you know, because I want to be a little gentle in the beginning of the roast. But also I want to move this coffee pretty fast because it's a short roast. So I can't like dilly-dally with.
You know how that when Derek says they feel a little different, that's also like feel as in like when you touch the bean too. Like some will feel very rough and then some will feel very smooth. So they feel a little different. Also, I also think he means like in the roaster, you'll have an intuitive, once you get there, you'll have an intuitive sort of experience with the roaster itself and with the certain coffee that you're roasting, which is, it's all like this. That's the art side. That's the art side of the experience side of roasting.
Or wait too much. So I'm going to go on a little bit higher charge temp for what I normally do. You know what I mean? For low density coffee.
Lots of jargon. So gentle meaning, I've said these words too, but hopefully, you know, like maybe you guys get it or maybe you don't. So gentle meaning a slower and lower application of heat. That means gentle. And then he'll say this other word.
But it's because I need to move the coffee fast. So it's kind of a balance between.
He said, I need to move the coffee fast, meaning that I need to roast this quicker and albeit aggressively. So almost in contrast with what he said, which was gentle. So the way that I think he's going to approach this is maybe have a not so high charge temp, right? And then he might soak it. And then he might want to move through the phases fairly quickly and have a overall short roasting time, overall roast time, like maybe in the 9 or 10 minute range.
Low energy input and being gentle with the coffee and also moving the coffee fast. I could go with a really high charge temp and then be gentle fuel application and still move it fast. But I think that shock of the really high charge temp on this low density Gesha isn't a good idea. So I'm going to kind of be right in the middle. I'm going to go with a median charge temperature, but I'm going to go with pretty high fuel and a short soak. So that's going to be the way I'm going to kind of deal with the gentle application of to a lower density coffee, but at the same token, moving this coffee fast because it needs to be a light, bright roast, so we don't want to leave it in the roaster for a long time. So it's kind of a little bit of a challenge. This is like, it feels a little bit like roaster calisthenics. You know, like you really got to think through what you're trying to do and you got to really apply yourself. So I've done, like I said, I've done quite a bit of work on this coffee to get it to where it needs to be, but I've only done a couple 500 gram roasts. I did a lot of my development of this coffee on this machine, but at a 200 gram charge weight. So those parameters are totally different. My thermocouples aren't accurate, and my fuel and airflows even, I'm changing a little bit. So we'll see how it goes. I probably won't nail it. Let's cross our fingers and cross our toes because this is a very important roast, but we'll do our best. So
see how much pressure you put on yourself as a roaster. So this is what I talked about in the other video and when I was talking about that like interview with Hasea, right? It's like we put so much pressure on ourselves as roasters, especially now. I'm gonna finally step up to the plate and roast a Gesha. Like I finally feel after that little therapy session yesterday, finally feel confident enough, not 100% confident, but confident enough. And that's really all you need. You just need enough to like take the first step and take action. That way you can just like, let's go. Let's just go find out, right? To roast this Gesha. It's coming probably tomorrow or the next day. And I only got 2 pounds of it because it's not terribly expensive. I think Hasea has some of the best prices around for green in small quantities. Yeah, they have really great prices. And I was like, you know what? This seems like a really good time to step up to the plate where I'm not so confident, but I feel like I have a good idea, and I'm going to get 2 pounds of it. Now, my machine roasts 2.2 pounds, so I'm going to be a little under capacity, and I'm going to have to keep that in mind when I'm at the roaster, because I'm not going to have a full capacity charge when I'm at the roaster. Just like Derek is saying here, is like, I'm roasting this 500 gram. It's going to be just a little different every single time that we change capacity, right? So let's continue.
To give you all what we're going to do here, I'm looking for a 4-minute dry end. I'm looking for a 7:15 first crack, and I'm looking for plus minute 45, roughly to a pretty light roast level. I do have a sample right here of my roast that I'm going to use to marry. But just so you guys know too, I've done a little bit deeper dive on coffee for these last couple weeks, and I'm trying to add in a little bit more technical data around the roasts and the coffee. So this is actually 13% moisture loss on this roast. Exactly 13%. So I'll do that after, but that's what this roast creates.
Okay, cool. So let's go over that again. 4-minute dry end. Okay. 4-minute dry end. So we're reaching green to yellow transition at exactly 4 minutes. Okay. Well, now let's remember. Now he's roasting on a 500 gram roaster. Okay. Then he's got a 7-minute 15 first crack. So generally, I would call that early. But since this is such a small machine, maybe that's okay. So from 4 minutes to 7 minutes, we've got like a 3-minute and 15 first crack. Still early. Still generally early. So this is what he means by moving through the roast fast. I got to move this coffee fast. Okay? So that's a short middle phase. 3 minutes 15. All right? It's not even 3 minutes 30. But this is all based on this, 500 gram roaster. But generally, it's still short, right? It's still quick. It's still aggressive. And then a plus 1 minute 45 on the finish. Now, I would call that kind of long. That's stepping into a little bit longer. But since we have, I don't know what it looks like in the ratio, the total ratio of the roast, but it's moving into a little bit longer, I think, third phase. But this is specific to this coffee. Now, we always have to remember this. This is specific to this coffee. Like, say, for example, this was the Pioneer that I have that I drop less than a minute in the third phase. But in the middle phase, I'm hitting like a little bit longer middle phase, maybe like 3 minutes 30, 3 minutes 45, something like that. So it's this scale of balancing these three things. Okay. And then really important information, 13% loss. So that, it's still a light roast. Generally, like Tiger Mountain has a 13% moisture loss or weight loss, I mean. Can we call it weight loss or we call it moisture loss? What's the consensus there? 30% loss. I always just put loss for consistency. So cool. Let's just see where it goes.
The SCA Gourmet Scale, it's a 63.4 finish color outside only on this bean. So those are the parameters for the roast. So pretty much I'm going to try and do this roast. We're going to do a full 500 gram charge.
So if you had that color meter, Agtron, the number would be 63.4. I don't have that. But that's how they, when you're in big business, that's how they monitor. This piece of equipment is thousands of dollars. So in order for them to make sure that they're on point for consistency, they have this color scale. So the number was 63.4, if that matters to you, if you got that stuff.
I have my airflow and fuel settings already set up and I have a plan right here. I'm actually going to use my old system of data logging on paper for this roast. It keeps me a little bit more present, and I feel like I have a little bit more ability to just be accurate and keep track of everything on my own. You know what I mean? So I'm not having to like flip my mind to a different thing or even look at a screen. I'm going to be right here with the paper and right here with the coffee. First, I'm going to get my fuel to my starting fuel, which is going to be 2.8. So I'm going to use 2.8 fuel, which that even sounds aggressive right there. And I'm going to turn it off. Now I'm going to lower my air to my starting airflow, which I'm going to use 35 on this dial for this starting airflow. So I got 35 on the dial for my airflow. Okay. Fuel is off. I'm going to use 2.8 kPa at 30 seconds. So my first minute plan of this roast is basically charge at 370.
370, wow. 370 charge. That's so high. Okay, interesting. Oh, because he's soaking. Okay, so these are the things you can play with. This is style of roasting now, okay? I'm like, wow, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't mean anything. It's just different than my own style of roasting. The reason why he can charge higher is because he's going to soak for 30 seconds. Does that make sense? I figured out that I don't necessarily have to, well, you don't have to do anything, but I preferred not to soak. So what did I do? So my interpretation of this is like, I would do a 350 charge, possibly, because it's honey processed. Well, for my particular coffee, I'm not going to try to confuse you, but he's charging 370, and then he's going to soak, meaning, when he hits the temperature 370 on the PID, okay, so not on the roast path or the bean temp probe or whatever. On the PID, he's going to wait for the temperature to come down. I think he comes down to temp and then he charges. So it'll be 370. He'll wait for that to be on the PID, charge the coffee. He's going to wait 30 seconds. And at 30 seconds, he's going to hit the on button on the fuel, and it's going to go right up to 2.8 kPa on his machine. That's what's going to happen. Okay, so let's go.
I'm going to wait 30 seconds. I already have my airflow set to starting airflow. And then at 30 seconds, I'm going to hit the ignition switch. Theoretically, it's going to provide me with 2.8 kPa gas because that's what I set it up to. But I'm going to look at it and make sure it's accurate. And then from there, we're going to let it ride a little bit. It's looking like my first planned adjustment is right around 330. I'm going to increase my air by a little bit to 40. In expectation of green to yellow transition. You know, I'm hoping to expedite that.
In expectation of green to yellow transition. Okay, yeah. So again, this is another style of roasting decision. This is style. Okay. So in preparation for hitting dry end, then he's gonna increase his air. So typically what I do in contrast is I'll wait for dry end, which is green to yellow transition, which is typically right around 300 degrees. Then I increase my air to medium. Does it matter? It doesn't, as long as you're consistent and it works for you. Meaning, when I say it works for you, you're tasting it in the cup and seeing in all the ways that your coffee is checking all the boxes, and it tastes good, and you're consistent and it's repeatable. That means it works for you. Okay. So the way that he's adjusting air at dry end, that just works for him in this case. So however you adjust your air at dry end, whatever system that you do, whatever style that you do, just make sure you're consistent.
That green to yellow transition, but also this coffee is a little more gentle. So I'm trying to like pull a little heat out of the steel and put it into the air a little earlier in the roast. So that's a little bit of my mindset there. But then right away after that, 330.
Okay. Again, style, right? He's like, I don't want to be too aggressive with this very expensive Gesha. I want to be gentle. So he has these kind of buffers in his mind that is affecting his style of roasting in particular for this coffee. Okay.
4 minutes, if we hit our green to yellow mark, I'm going to do an airflow adjustment and a fuel adjustment at green to yellow. So we'll hopefully hit that at 4 minutes. That's our plan. But if the roast goes a little long, then we're just going to wait at green to yellow is where we're going to increase our air to medium, and we're going to lower our gas by about a kPa at that point. Okay, now we're coming up on our charge temp. All right, here we go. Loading the hot.
Lower our gas by about a kPa. So if he's at 2.8, almost 3 at this point, and then he hits green to yellow or dry end at 4 minutes, then he'll come down to maybe 2. So he'll be way over here. So this is 3 kPa on the video, like his gauge, right? He'll come down probably all the way down to about here. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Cool.
Hopper. Here we go.
Look how tiny it is.
At
How cute it is.
370. And, oh, I went a little early. I was excited. I was so excited about the roast, I went early. I think it's the first time I've done that in probably like a year. So I'm going to write that down. 371.
He's so like meticulous, right? I miss Derek so much. I have no idea where he is, but yeah, so he comes down to temp and charges. Again, this is style. You can come up to temp and charge, or you can come down to temp and charge. Doesn't matter as long as you're consistent.
Not that it's a big deal, but might as well be accurate. Okay, so now at 30 seconds, I'm going to hit the button. It's supposed to be 2.8 kPa.
Right. So I used to be really kind of lazy about my note taking, and it does, in the grand scheme of things, when you keep doing this over and over again, if you're like a roaster and you roast, you're going to roast a lot. You know, this isn't just something that you kind of do. You'll want to be as accurate as possible, because the more that you can do that, the benefit of that is that you'll start to see patterns. So if you charge early, like Derek just showed us, right? But you wrote down in your notes that it was 370, and something happens, something goes wrong, and that's the kind of note take you are. It's like, oh, it's 1 degree off. Oh, it's 10 seconds off. Oh, it's 30 seconds off. Whatever, and you still write down something inaccurate from what actually happened because you had this plan. You're not going to be able to see the patterns or the signs or have any predictability or build any like intuition or intuitive sort of roasting, because you weren't really accurate. So you need to be accurate so you can actually kind of like see how much wiggle room you have when you make decisions and stuff like that, and then write it down. So it's cool to have plan, right? But then when what actually happens, you need to write down what actually happens. I'm just saying that because I used to do that shit. So, I mean, like, I think it's natural human tendency to be sort of lazy and take shorthands and everything, but write down what actually happened. Like, he just shows a really good example for us.
We'll verify that after we hit the button. All right, we got the button in at 30 seconds, and we're looking at 2.79. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to say it's 2.8. You know, I'm pretty good on that. Oop, and now just move. Oh, sorry, right there. Cool. All right, so we're good. So I'm going to make a little mark up by my things that I've done those correctly. We have our 35 air. Okay. So now it's basically just focusing on the coffee. I'm going to watch the coffee take on color.
So the reason why you would want to recheck the pressure if you were roasting like this, I used to roast like this. It's a little too much thinking for me, I guess. I don't know why. Maybe I just went over to the mic side of how to roast, because that's what I was taught in that time. But yeah, if you don't have enough pressure coming from your gas, sometimes it would waver a bit, right? So that's why you need to verify it, especially if you're roasting from a 20-gallon tank. The pressure is going to change from when it's full to when it's like barely full, right? So that's just stuff you need to pay attention to.
I'll try and let you all know a little bit about what's going on. We don't have a lot of time in this roast, but I have planned.
Okay, so he's just saying all that, like being able to roast a little bit more with your senses versus with thermocouples, because he's not using roast path, as you can see. The only gauge that he had is maybe like the gauges on the machine, right? But how accurate are they? So he's not really depending upon the gauges on the machine. He's really using all of his senses, you know, looking at the coffee. He's going to smell the coffee. He's going to go by roaster intuition. At this time, he's going to use his time and temp readouts and stuff like that, and he'll plot his course like he said he was doing. But yeah, you just can't rely too much on technology as a roaster, and you've always got to be honing those 5 senses as a roaster. That's what he's doing right now.
Range. And then I'm also going to record my minutes, which I missed that first minute. 2 minutes, 2:45 on my little sheet. This helps keep me honest. And it's also a really simple way to do my ROR. You know what I mean? So every minute I'm going to plot my minute, and then I just have to subtract the previous minute from the current minute, and then it tells me what my last minute's ROR was. And that tells me how fast I'm moving, things like that. You know, it's old data because it's the previous minute's data. It's a little bit weird, but for me,
Simply, you just do some math. I'm terrible at math, and I thank the Lord for the Roast Path Lord for the automatic plotting of the ROR data, because I learned this with Mike, and I'm just really, really not good with numbers like this. I can plot stuff, but I'm not about to do math, even though I know how simple it is. It freaks me out. It gives me anxiety. It takes me all the way back to 4th grade when I could not do flashcards with my mom. So I have an aversion to math in general. But if you guys want to do that, it's a really great practice. If you're down with the number thing, I would definitely do it at least once. I've done it a couple times. It was a highly stressful situation, but it did make me understand ROR a little bit better, for sure.
that's okay. I'm using that to predict how I'm moving forward, and I have a somewhat of understanding around how my adjustments are going to play out down the road. All right, now I'm just going to make a quick check on the coffee. Everything looks very nice. There's just a subtle brightening of the coffee, not really a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, basically ROR is giving you a prediction, is giving you data so that you can predict what to do next. Right? We look at the ROR so we can predict how we can adjust the fuel, how we can adjust the air, right? That's why we look at ROR so much, and we want it to be always going down, like rule number 1, going down, right? But we're looking at the behavior of the ROR curve as it goes, and it's calculating it for you, right? So it's letting us know how to be predictive in our roast.
So I'm not really getting a lot of data. So now we're coming up to 2:45. So only a minute 15 from green to yellow transition. So this is a short roast, you know what I mean? So when you do these 4-minute or sub 4-minute dry end roasts, you don't really have much time to make an adjustment. You know what I mean? Like right now is when I would start seeing whether I'm on track or off track, and I have a minute to get to my mark. And if I make a crazy adjustment, it's probably going to play itself out later on, which is beyond my mark, and that might be a mistake. So to certain contexts, I got to kind of let this roast ride a little bit, you know, in some context. You know what I mean? I think I could make an adjustment right around now to mid to try and get this roast more on track or stay on track, but we're going to have to just see how that goes. Now we're coming up to about 30 seconds from green to yellow. I am seeing a very, very nice brightening of the green.
Mid. What? What's mid? Mid of the middle phase. Okay, yeah. I've heard him say that before. Mid. Middle of the middle phase, which is the second phase.
It's not even close to yellow, but it's taking on color quite a bit. So at 340, I'm going to do my airflow increase. And that was it right there. Okay, now we have 20 seconds to transition. It's taking on heat. Well, we're moving fast. We might hit the mark, but I'm going to say 415 is probably going to be more realistic.
Okay, this is his preemptive. So that's when we're going to move our
adjustments then of lowering gas and another increase of air minor to medium. Okay, we're almost there. I'm going to get on the trier. Ooh, we're close, but we're not going to hit it. Okay, that's 4 minutes, 326. I'm going to write that down just so we have that marked. All right, I think I'm almost there. Yep, we're really close. I'm using the sight glass on this one.
326. Okay. So, Mill City roasters often will wait till everything is yellow in the trier before they call green to yellow transition. For the most part, I think I try to hit that as well. I try to make sure like everything is truly yellow. And then that often does, because I think the way that I charge, coincide with 300 degrees bean temp, not PID, but bean temp. He's going off PID. And then it's typically around 4 minutes, something like that. Yeah. So for the most part, we're roasting pretty similarly, even though he's preemptive on his air adjustment.
Because I have a really nice sight glass on this machine, and I can really use it for green to yellow. Okay, it's like we're going to go right there. 420. 338. So I'm going 45, and then I'm lowering my gas to 1.8. So that was 420. I'm going to make a little note on that. 420 DE, and that was when I did my 1.8 and my 45. So I
Okay, so he was later. Okay, cool. I was ahead of myself there. 420 on the green to yellow. That's pretty similar to me. Yeah, pretty similar to me.
lowered the gas by 1 kPa, so now we're only at 1.8 kPa, and then I increased my gas to what would be the medium, my air, I'm sorry, would be the medium airflow on this machine. That stuff I've already worked out ahead of time over experience, but also with the lighter trick. We do have a lighter trick video. Definitely get a lighter, keep it by your roaster, and use the lighter trick to constantly verify your airflows on your roaster. Empty drum, full drum. Okay, now we're gonna give it a try a little bit just to see the development. Oh man, it's a beautiful tan color. This coffee just really looks pretty when it roasts. It's one of those coffees that tastes amazing, but also looks pretty amazing, I wanna say. It's a washed type process, but it's eco-pulped or something. In Panama, they do very unique stuff. And so this is I'm gonna call it a fancy wash process, but it very much takes on color. I don't know, a little bit like a natural. It's funny, it doesn't take on color like a traditional wash for me, and I think that's a density factor. Okay, now we're coming up on 540. So now I'm looking at making an adjustment down in gas at 6 minutes. So it's 6.
See how much wealth of knowledge he has as the experience that just shines through what he just said right there. You imagine how many pounds of coffee and types of process and types of origin you'd have to roast to even know that, right? So just so impressive, so like fun to watch this guy roast.
Minutes, even though we were a little late, so it really should be 6:15, because when we're off, once we get green to yellow, we just add on our phases to that. We don't speed up or slow down at that point. Adjustments are a little harder, so I'm gonna wait a little bit on this adjustment. Even though my gut tells me I should make it right now, because I feel like we're gonna coming up on crack a little early, I'm waiting, and I'm gonna do it at the 6:15 mark, which is what it would truly be for this profile. So right there, I did it. I think I heard an outlier. So now we're looking for 7:30 first crack. My gut tells me we're gonna hit it a little early.
Okay, so even at 6 minutes into the roast, let's let him.
You know, I'm hearing a little bit, so I'm gonna make an airflow adjustment right
Okay.
there to 50.
At 6 minutes, now down to about 1 kPa. Okay. Yeah, it's because he's roasting aggressively, meaning still with a lot of heat in the drum, in the roaster. Some coffees, this is a wash process coffee, so that makes sense to have a little bit more heat in the drum. It's a wash process. It can take more heat, right? Now, if this was like a natural, I would be way down. Not way down, but I would be below 1 kPa at this point because it was a natural. It absorbs heat a lot easier. This is a wash process, so it doesn't. So these are the types of things that you'll be coming across when you're roasting washed versus natural. Like, what are the big differences that I can expect in the roaster? It's this right here. When we're approaching first crack, you know, how much heat are we still giving it until it approaches first crack? And its process has a lot to do with that. A wash can take on more heat. A natural will absorb more of that heat, will move quicker. So you have to be gentler. You'll have less heat application for a natural, okay?
And that was at 6:30. So I'm gonna put that down, 50 air, and 1 on the gas. I'm gonna lower the gas to 0.8. A little bit lower, and that...
Okay, yeah. So his airflow adjustment right now, because he's already hearing outliers, a little too early for him, right? At 6 minutes 30 almost. 6 minutes 29 almost, 6 minutes 30. That's a little trick that we do to like, we're moving a little fast. Like, let's try to take off some of the heat. So instead of lowering the heat, which could be too aggressive in terms of like too hard of a correction, let's increase the air a little bit. That's something I do all the time, where it's like, what's a smaller adjustment that I can make when I'm hearing outliers already, when I feel like that's a little early, I want to take off a little heat from the roast. Let's increase the air a little bit, maybe by like 5 increments or so on the dial. Not too much, because we don't want to take off too much, and I don't want to move the heat so much that I stall or my first crack is now too late, right? So this is what we can do. We can increase the air a little bit to take off a little bit of heat at this point. So that's what he just did. And I do that all the time.
Is at 640. I'm going to make that adjustment. 640.8 kPa. And I think we're right about to crack. I'm going to call that 650. So we got a 650 crack. So we came into crack quite a bit early. So our goal was 7.
Now it only took him 20 more seconds from the time that he adjusted the air to make another fuel adjustment. Okay, so it does matter the order in which you make these moves, I think, in terms of like when we start to get like, these are the more like finer movements, micro adjustments that the Mill City Roaster itself excels at, because now we can make these little tiny moves, right? Not all roasters can do that. So it always depends on what kind of roaster you have. But because we're working with a Mill City roaster, we can make these moves. Okay, so this is within the context of using a Mill City roaster, because we can move our air like that, and then we can move our fuel like that with these little micro adjustments. Not every roaster can do that.
30. Wow. So we came into crack about,
yeah, that's the first crack
40
to
seconds
me.
early. To keep it accurate to phases. You know what I mean? But now we're going to stick to it. So
650, I'll write it down, first crack. And he hasn't touched his air yet. And he was at, what was his fuel at? At 1 kPa. At 1 kPa. Okay. Pretty normal for the fuel anyway.
50 plus a minute 45. It's going to be 750, 835. So it's looking like we want 835 for our final time. Roughly, we're going to look at roast level. I'm going to get on the tryer a little bit right now, although I can see in the sight glass we got some nice color going. You know what I mean? We're not moving very fast. We're moving at a pretty slow rate right now. I'm going to lower my gas a little bit more to 0.5 at 740. I'm going to make that note. And now we're just going to let this ride basically at this point. Yep, we got the airflow right. We got our 0.5 gas right. We're just going to let this ride a little bit. We got about another 40 seconds to go. So I'm going to take a little tryer action and just compare. Oh, yep, looking really good. We're not moving a lot, you know what I mean? Like we might go 1.5 degrees before we discharge this, but 35, we got 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 25 seconds at this point. Yep, we got the airflow right. We got our 0.5 gas right. We're just going to let this ride a little bit. We got about another 40 seconds to go. So I'm going to take a little tryer action and just compare.
4 or 5. Oh, there you go.
Yep, looking really good. We're not moving a lot, you know what I mean? Like we might go 1.5 degrees before we discharge this, but 35, we got 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 25 seconds, probably 405, you know what I mean? We'll see. We're moving very slow. I'm going to get my cooling tray up and ready to go. We're coming down to the last 35 seconds or last 20 some seconds. Color looks really good. Crack is just about stopped to stopping. I'm killing the fuel because we got plenty of momentum. We're only going a few more seconds. Crack is just ebbing off right now. We're at 405. Air on. Discharge. 435 to 405. Sorry, 835 to 405. Slow down. Reset my timer. Turn my timer off.
Gesha.
All right.
Gesha.
I'm liking it.
From Panama.
So this is like I said, it's a lower density, pretty big bean, and it's we're not doing a lot of development.
We're not doing a lot of development. That means that's kind of like a weird way of talking about it because you've developed this. It's a weird word. Anyway, what he means is at the last phase, we're not hanging out there for a long time. We're not developing it for a long time. Like the last phase is also often called the development phase, which is kind of a misnomer, but like whatever. You know how we all use different words. So like the last phase, we're not developing it long. To me, it looks kind of long, but it's because I think the middle phase was so short, right? I don't know. This really depends on what you're going to taste in the cup, how much nuance and peak flavor, I guess, you could sort of bring out with this type of style of roast. It was an aggressive roast in that he moved fairly quickly through third phase, moved fairly quickly through the first phase in general. So the The second phase was fairly quick as well, right? We got a really early first crack at like 6 minutes 50. Should have been at like, for his plan, it should have been at like 7:30. So almost a minute, almost, it was 40 seconds off, he said. So that's interesting. I think that's going to bring some real like acidity to the cup for sure. And then finishing at 8, but the finishing temp at around 4 or 5 is still interesting. And that, to me, that's like a temp for like medium roasted coffees. But he did say that he had a loss of 13%. I wonder if he'll give me that number too. So let's check it out.
I mean, so it's not swelling a lot, it's not smoothing a lot, it's not taking on a lot of color. So it looks like a pretty solid light roast in the tray. You know, I'd say there's a fair amount of lacking development, a lot of wrinkliness in the surface. The flat side of the bean is very ridgy, and there's some like dark color still where it hasn't swollen at all. You know what I mean? So it's on the lighter side. But like I said, there's 13% moisture loss in this roast, which we might have been a little less on this one because we went a little faster. So this is probably more like 12.75, I want to say, 12.6 moisture loss. We'll do a light tails reading and a moisture loss on this roast after it's done cooling in the tray. It'll probably take another 2 or 3 minutes, but I consider this a success. I haven't roasted this roast enough too to know if this shorter mid-phase might be better. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be better because my mid-phase was already pretty short, and then taking 40 seconds off of it is a lot, in my opinion, for this short of a mid-phase. So it's a pretty different cup. So I'm predicting this is going to be a little thinner.
And I want to say too, like it's really important that, or it's cool too, to see that they still put out in public for you to see that this roast didn't go according to plan, because that is the reality of roasting. And to still put it out there in the public, open to comments, open to the public to interpret, is not brave or whatever, but I mean, I think it's real. So I think it's important to like kind of like pat Derek on the back, or Mill City Roaster on the back, like, yeah, that's how it goes. I often would feel like at odds, like, oh, I didn't go so well, so I'll feel like I don't want to put it out because my ego is like, don't put it out, they're gonna see that you're a fraud. But I don't care now. You know, I've often not cared, but the thought always comes in my mind that, oh, I'm not gonna put it out because now it's not as pretty, right? We want to put out the pretty thing, but this is the reality of roasting. It doesn't mean you're a bad roaster. It means you're an honest roaster, which I think is more important than being, like, I don't know, like a influencer roaster or whatever.
A body than the ideal. Still going to be a great cup, but it's going to be a little thinner of body and maybe a little less sweet and a little more.
Yeah. So thinner body because less development in the middle phase. Yeah. Sweeter cup because less sweet because not so long in development, not so long in the middle, thinner body. You're going to see thicker body cup, like more mouthfeel. Sweeter coffee, the longer it stays in the middle. It doesn't necessarily mean sweet like toothache sweet, but sweeter as in on the spectrum of coffee flavor taste, because on one side you have acidity and the other you have sweet.
More acidic, which is probably going to be a super solid light roast. Although I tend to like my light roast being a little more balanced by extending the mid-phase and developing a little more sweetness and body that then balance out the acidity and brightness and nuance of a light roast. So we'll see how it goes. We'll come on in close and check out the roast.
Yeah, looks good.
That was
so
back,
fast.
Everybody.
Hold on,
So now-
let's go back. Okay, pause. All right. Yeah, you could see how even and light color it looks. Yeah, it looks a little, to me, it looks a little more swelled than what I think he audibly said. You know, like I look at the flat part of it. He said this still has ridges. It still has, you know, stuff like that. And I think that's because to me, in my standard, 1 minute 45 sounds long. Doesn't mean it is. I'm just saying, like, in my style of roasting, it sounds long. Okay. Yeah, looks pretty solid. Like, I roast so aggressive that I often would tip coffees. So I think it looks great. But yeah, I just wanted to get a longer look at it.
We're about 24 hours after roast
'Kay.
on the roast we did yesterday of the new Gesha. I roasted the ideal, and the ideal went a little bit short in the mid phase. And so I just wanted to follow up and just do a quick cupping of that.
Yeah, for sure. So when you guys are roasting, like, I think maybe this could be missing from your learning environment, which is like you guys will send me like a roast curve, and just like that. Like you'll send me, okay, here's what I did. Here's what I did. Here's what I did. I think what you guys should be doing on your own is like, yes, you can still send me that, but you can send me a in comparison too. And I hope you're doing that on your end where it's like, here's this coffee I roasted on Monday. I tried it again on Tuesday. I tried it again on Wednesday. And you cup them all together against each other. So you can see if those mistakes that you thought were mistakes at the roaster are actually truly mistakes, because you're cupping, you're right there and you're going and you're verifying with the taste in the cup, like, is this truly a mistake? Or is it okay? Or is it a serendipitous awesome thing where like, holy shit, I shortened up the middle phase by like 40 seconds and now it tastes even more exciting and has even more flavor and nuance. How crazy. I just discovered something cool. So we need to wait till we like, even though we think we made a mistake at the roaster, wait till we get to the cupping table. We have comparison, and then cup it and then freaking write it down. And then you'll know. That's the only way you're going to know is in the cup. Okay.
And that one, just from like a mind's eye perspective, opposed to now I have the reality of the ideal on the table versus the short. And I'm going to know in a few seconds here whether the short is better or worse than the ideal. On top of that, I also have another roast I did in the interim, which is a little bit opposite of the short. It's a long. So the mid and the development phase on this one went long. So I have a ideal, I have a long, and I have a short. And so we're just going to cup them all out quickly against each other, and then we're just going to see what we get. I'm just going to do the smells really quick.
This is awesome. This is what you should be doing when you're roasting a new coffee all the time. It's like when we're trying to create a profile, right? In the beginning of roasting, you're like, oh, I'll just do the 40-40-20. Done. That's what I used to do. I was just like, just do 40-40-20, That's what I read in the book. But in actuality, it's like, okay, let's roast it. Let's see what the coffee does. I think this is what it could do based on my past experience. If I have no past experience, like I can start with 40-40-20. Okay, let's roast it. And then we do another one. And we go, let's do, and we cup that one. We go, okay, whatever. I have some thoughts about it. Let's do another one where I feel like it could be better and more brighter and more da-da-da-da. Let's shorten up the middle phase. Now we're modulating flavor, right? Now we're putting our roaster's effort and artistry and style onto it. Okay, let's do that. Okay, now, we cup that. Okay, I don't know. Maybe it needs more sweet. I feel like it needs more body. Let's elongate the middle phase. Let's roast that. Now, let's roast them all in a line together, like what Derek is doing here. And that's the way that's just the work. That's how you find it. And if you don't love it, it's going to become very tedious. So you got to love this stuff to actually do this type of work, because it could get very like, it's like a little scientist. You got to love it.
I'm going to pick up the cups. Traditionally, you don't pick up the cups. You know what I mean? It's kind of a faux pas. It's rude on the cupping table, but I'm cupping solo, and I really want to get deep into these coffees.
I wish I was there.
A little bit like when you're at the winery and you're volatilizing the esters. So we're going to do that a little bit. I'm going to pick up my cups. So I'm just going to move forward, and we're going to do this together. There's lots.
When I was, funny story, really quick. I was with Mike at Clatch, and we would all pick up all the cups. But yeah, when you're in an SEA situation, professional situation, you're in a cupping class, don't touch the cups. It's rude. It's bad etiquette, bad cupping etiquette. Okay, but you're by yourself, or you're with people that are cool with you, or whatever, that you don't care. We were all picking up the cups. I even drank from the same cup as Mike, cupping. I was like, I don't give a fuck. Let's go. That was probably a bad idea, but at the end of the day, we didn't care. We were like here for the coffee. But yeah, just good to know. Or ask first,
Lots of sweet florals in there, but then there's just a a really nice kind of sweet caramel smell. Very balanced of smell, but very nice. Okay, that one's a little more muted. So I'm going to call that one, instead of orange blossom, it's more like orange marmalade. It's kind of like cooked orange.
And just a plain piece of paper. It's so hard to like keep everything in a notebook, you know. Even with lines, I feel it's very restrictive. But yeah, clean pieces of paper. I mean, if you're one of those people who's like, how best to take notes or whatever, like if you don't feel good about lines or dots or whatever, just get a freaking plain piece of paper.
But then there's a really nice like tea rose that I didn't get in the ideal, and a kind of like high caramelized sugar note that's really nice. So I'm gonna score that one my ideal. Which
You'll even have style of cuppers, style of smell. Like Mike would do this. And he would shake it like this. He'd do this. You do that. And I was like, holy crap. All right, let's do that. That looks fun. And then you have to be careful not to inhale that all up in your nose. And that's just style. Derek looks very like, okay, cool, I got it. I have a problem with I have like a deviated septum, I think. One nose is always just clogged. So I do really have to get in there. But that's style. Like, what do I do? Develop your own style.
I'm going to give it an 825. And I'm going to score this one an 825 too. It's different. We said there's like a tea rose, a floral, sweet rose note in this one that's really nice. Okay, now we're going to go to yesterday's.
Okay, 825. You know, I've been thinking about scoring a lot. I think we're going to do a video on it as well. But I'm going to skip to the cupping part so we can just see, because this video is getting so long. Let's see if the short did okay, the long and the ideal. Let's see how they were.
Was really surprisingly my favorite in the table. It was odd. I did not think that was going to happen. That wasn't part of my plan. And I called it at hot, juicy citrus blend. It was almost more like a blend of citrus. And then Meyer lemon. It had that very Meyer lemon, which I consider a more delicate floral citrus fruit. That was very much in this one, in my opinion. And then I also called it sweet, and there was a summer melon note that was really nice, round, sweet kind of flavor. And then as it cooled, it became like magnolia, like very floral and citrus, like citrusy floral, but in a sweet, balanced, juicy way that was really nice.
All right, cool. So see, like sometimes you don't know that little mistake that you did at the roaster is actually a good thing. Right? You've got to cup it, and you've got to be able to compare it to, say, your ideal. And even though your roast profile, roast curve maybe doesn't look pretty, and I know how powerful it is to want to have pretty curves and pretty shit to show off and stuff, but you've really got to let the cup sort of dictate, I think, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, dictate and let that sort of lead your roasting. I think you have a deeper understanding of roasting, and also get more joy from it, because like at the bottom of your heart, like you've tasted it, you've confirmed it with your taste, with the cup. Okay, that's very interesting. So short, and yeah, if he did not develop this sort of quote unquote long development phase in the last phase to hit that 4 or 5 temperature, would it be as sweet, right? I think that's definitely where it comes from. Now, he's dealing with an incredibly high quality green, right? Where maybe no matter what you do to it, it's going to taste good. I've had that experience. I was like, wow, I feel like I messed up. Many times I'm not consistent. It doesn't feel consistent, but it still consistently tastes good. You know what I mean? You're not kicking it out of bed. So really interesting. This has given me a little bit more deeper insight, I think, on what I'm going to do with my plant when I get my geisha. Gesha, again, it's just spelling. It's just like where it comes from, on how they prefer to name it, I guess. But yeah, let's see. I got some really cool information from this video. I hope you guys did too. Like, I think it was kind of fun, like, just like listening back to one of Derek's videos and like with a little bit more presence and a little bit more focus because I'm trying to interpret what he's saying to you guys, and I feel like that was really fun. You'll find the link to this original video in the description. Shout out to Derek and Mill City. I know that they're not, not together anymore. Whatever. But still, I love listening to Derek's content, and in the beginning I was so overwhelmed with all of his jargon and all of his passion and how fast he speaks. Like the last part I did 2x the audio there, but now coming back 3 years later, almost into my journey, and listening to what he's saying, I can, like, for the most part, like 90% understand everything he's saying, which is such a nice validating feeling for me as a roaster. Feeling so lost in the beginning, and then now after all this time having some really good semblance and confidence of like, okay, I know what you're saying. Let me go try that. Right? That feels good. Okay. Well, that's sort of homework for Gesha. This is the prep I'm trying to do, the respect I'm trying to show this coffee that I'm going to get in a day or two, and then I'm going to roast it, and we're going to do a little roast along, like how I do. We're going to cup it, everything, and we're only going to have really one shot at it. So until I buy it again. But yeah, it's kind of pricey, so I want to just take my time with it, and we'll see. We'll see you in the next one. Okay, so that was fun. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.